Women are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than men. Why? Today, I want to discuss some important differences in the way a woman's brain ages and how this increases their risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Hi, I'm neuroscientist Dr. Ben Webb, and I want to help you cultivate a healthy brain for a mentally healthy and happy life. Welcome to episode 36 of Better Brain, Better You. Hey there, hope you've had a good week. I'm so pleased that you can join me for this really important episode on the reasons why women are more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in, and please do subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Also, a big thank you if you're listening to the podcast. Really appreciate you being here wherever you get your podcasts. We release weekly episodes for brains of all ages. But before we get into the content today, I want to give you a free guide to show you how to use the food you eat to improve your brain health and reduce your risk of mental decline later in life. This guide shows you the types of foods that you can eat to boost your memory, your mood, and your thinking. You can get this free guide at ologyonlinecourses.com/brainfoods. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/brainfoods. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia on the planet. It affects 50 million people worldwide, and for every man suffering with Alzheimer's disease, there are 2 women living with this debilitating disorder. We rarely talk about this, and we really should. We know that women have a higher risk of breast cancer, and everybody understands that breast cancer is a woman's issue, but a woman in her 60s is almost twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease in her life than she is to develop breast cancer. Very few people talk about Alzheimer's as a disease that women should be concerned about or should know about. And at the heart of why women have a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease than men is the way their brain ages. A woman's brain ages differently to a man's brain. A man's brain ages gradually over time at about the same pace as they get older and older, whereas a woman's brain ages in a more stepwise manner. There are key moments in a woman's life that either accelerate brain aging or slow down brain aging. It's not that a female brain looks different to a male brain. And if you listen to my discussion with Dr. Sarah McKay in episode 16 of the podcast, she made very clear, as do other prominent neuroscientists like Dr. Lisa Mosconi, that there's very little evidence for the concept of a female brain or a male brain for that matter. But there are some really important differences in the way a woman's brain ages and responds to her reproductive organs that actually drives aging in women. Today I want to talk about 3 important biological changes that happen to women at different stages of their lives that change the way their brain ages and increases their risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. These changes are referred to in scientific circles as the 3 Ps: puberty, pregnancy, and peri-menopause. Common to each of these stages in a woman's life are the importance and impacts of hormones on her brain. Hormones are the conductor telling the brain how to behave. They are the key that unlocks the brain's energy and health at different stages of life. And puberty is the first stage of life during which hormones have a massive impact on the brain. Puberty is obviously common to both men and women. From the moment of conception, the brain has been growing at light speed. And once we hit puberty, the reproductive system in the body and the brain are maturing together in ways that go above and beyond just reproduction. So during puberty, there's this explosion of hormonal power which triggers the brain to say, enough growing now, I need to get more specialised at the skills which I'm going to need as an adult. So it starts shedding brain connections that it doesn't need anymore and keeps brain connections that it uses a lot and will need in the future. So for example, you no longer need the brain connections for learning to ride a bike or to tie your shoelaces because you've mastered those skills. But if you play a lot of netball, you like to write stories, or you love photography, you'll keep the brain connections that support those skills because you still need them. I'm going to use them later in life. The brain gets smaller, but becomes much more efficient. So those brain cells that you have in your adolescence are pretty much what you'll have for the rest of your life. But the connections between those brain cells will change, will grow, get discarded, but the brain cells themselves will actually stay the same. So one key difference between men and women during puberty is the changes mediated by hormones. We all know that men and women have different hormones. Men have more androgens, things like testosterone. Women have more estrogen, like estradiol, which is the most potent of the estrogen hormones. These hormones are not just important for reproduction and fertility, they're also incredibly important for brain function. They literally supercharge your brain, and when the level of these hormones are high, your brain energy is high, brain activity goes up. And when these hormones are low, your brain energy is low and brain activity goes down. And as we'll see, estrogen levels are incredibly important for a woman's brain health and brain aging. So second, as a woman knows much better than any man can express, pregnancy is another explosion of hormones. For the entire time a woman is pregnant, there are things that are happening inside a woman's brain and body that are driven by hormonal surges. It's a real explosion of hormonal changes for a woman. But after a woman gives birth, an amazing thing happens. Her brain actually shrinks once the baby is born, and then eventually over time it grows back to its original size. The biological explanation for this beautiful phenomenon is that a woman's brain stops growing new brain cells after giving birth. And once the baby is self-sufficient and women stop breastfeeding, brain cells start to grow again in a mother's brain. And this brain makeover appears to be associated with a maturation and specialization process that allows women to become more focused and attuned to their baby's needs. So from a neuroscience perspective, this is absolutely bonkers. I was taught during my training that the brain remains completely stable, remains static when a woman or man reaches adulthood. But it turns out it's not. It's very dynamic and still retains what we call neuroplasticity, even at this mature stage of a woman's life. And amazingly, these brain changes are associated with maternal attachment and the mother's ability to understand the mental state of their baby. So third, and certainly the stage in a woman's life that is rarely talked about, and should certainly be talked about way more than it is, and much more openly than it is the menopause, or technically speaking, the peri-menopause. So this is a transitional phase between having a regular cycle and no longer having a cycle, when your body makes the natural transition to menopause, marking the end of the reproductive years. Just like puberty and pregnancy, hormones, specifically estrogen, are having a huge effect on a woman's brain. When estrogen is high, your brain energy is high and brain activity goes up. Unfortunately, women in midlife experience a sharp and strong decline in estrogen as they enter perimenopause. And when estrogen declines, brain cells start slowing down and they start aging faster. And the perimenopause, which can last up to 10 years, is when women start having menopausal symptoms that affect their brain, including brain fog, depression, and forgetfulness. This can be an incredibly confusing time when these symptoms start to occur, because lots of these symptoms aren't often associated with the menopause, but they are just as real and just as impactful as hot flushes or other symptoms that might be more commonly talked about. So women tend to build up the toxic protein in their brain which causes Alzheimer's disease at an earlier age than men do. And this happens during the transition to menopause. We tend to think of Alzheimer's as a disease of old age because the symptoms develop usually when people are in their 70s. But the truth is that Alzheimer's starts with changes in the brain years, probably decades before the mental decline and symptoms that happen later in life. It's a silent disease that starts in midlife. It accumulates over time, and eventually the brain damage is so severe you get clinical symptoms like mental decline and memory loss. So Alzheimer's is not a disease of old age, it's a disease of midlife, and the hormonal changes that happen only to women throughout their life, but particularly the effects of the decline in hormonal levels on a woman's brain during peri-menopause that don't happen to a man's brain, could explain why more women than men have Alzheimer's disease. So before we finish up, I want to give you a free guide to show you how to use the food that you eat to improve your brain health and reduce your risk of mental decline and things like Alzheimer's disease later in life. This guide shows you the types of foods that you can eat to boost your memory, mood, and thinking. And you can get this free guide at ologyonlinecourses.com/brainfoods. That's ologyonlinecourses.com/brainfoods. Thank you so much for watching or listening today. It's been a pleasure spending time with you, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.